Hi, we're all familiar with these books, the Chronicles of Narnia. There are few people who didn't read them as a child. In addition, most people are familiar with the recently released Disney movies, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, and The Don Treader. But we're not going to talk about those books. We're going to talk about this book, The Narnia Code, by Michael Ward, a distinguished C.S. Lewis scholar, who's discovered something intriguing about the Narnia books. Frequently, people complain that there's sort of a hodgepodge to the Narnia books, and that Lewis was interested in fascinating children, and while he had a basic storyline, he threw in a little of this and a little of that, and so there are characters that don't make any sense. For example, Father Christmas in Narnia. Why would there be a Christmas in Narnia? And some of the other characters and episodes have that same quality about them. They just seem to appear. But Ward discovers something while reading Lewis's poem, The Planets. He discovers an underlying theme which unites the 7 books, and discovers that Lewis has pulled a clever trick on us by playing the game of the medieval scholar. Ward claims that the 7 books of Narnia represent the 7 medieval planets. Today, we think there are 9 planets or 8 planets and a bunch of Kuiper objects, but in the Middle Ages, people thought there were 7 planets: the Moon, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. The Earth wasn't counted as a planet because in the medieval mind and in the ancient mind, the Earth was thought to be the center of the universe and to stand still. But each one of these planets, which simply means rovers, things that move through the sky, unlike the stars, which seem to move all together in a pattern, the planets seem to move across the sky, the way the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and the way the moon does the same thing. The planets can be seen to move between the constellations. Each one of the planets were thought to reflect a character and to have an influence on people living on Earth. And that is from where we get the word influenza, because these diseases were thought to be the result of the influence of the planets. Anyway, Lewis is apparently playing a remarkable game with us, because while we've forgotten it, each one of the days of the week, each one of the 7 days are named for one of the planets, right? The obvious ones are Sunday for the sun and Monday for the moon. The others are a little more complicated because they get, in many cases, translated from Greek or Latin into Norse. And so we have the Norse versions of the gods naming the days. But each one of the days stands for one of the planets and generally bears the name of one of the mythological gods. And when you read the books of Narnia, Ward asserts that each one of the chapters reflects the influence or character or dominant good trait of that planet, that day. And that these are all formed into Christian instruction. And that may be strange because we're not used to thinking of God's small g as being something capable of anything but the occult. But Ward, as Lewis was careful to point out, in the Bible itself, we're told that the stars sing out their praise of God, and of course, Jesus himself told his people that they were gods, and and at the time was citing Ezekiel. Small g gods, Christians were not forbidden to believe in. What they were told when they were told that they were sons of God and that they were sort of the gods on the earth, they were told they were mortal and they had to live and be subservient to, God. Just like in the Narnia books, you have a high king And that High King is subservient to Aslan, right, who is the Christ symbol. And then Aslan is, of course, subservient to his never-seen creator, the ultimate God who rules over their world. Ward makes this point in part by pointing out the name of the castle where the kings of Narnia live. The name of the castle is Per Caravel, which he translates to mean that it is the home of a tenant of a tenant, meaning that the kings who rule the world are merely the tenants of Aslan, who is but a symbol, or who but stands in for the real owner of everything, for God. And so teaching people, the children, and the rest of us, that we are but tenants in this place and have our duties in this hierarchy. And all these adventures or misadventures that they have that help them to develop character lead but to one thing: the final chapter in the book, when the world is drawn to a close and judgment is made, and in the case of the children, they are rewarded for their faith. This provides an interesting interpretation of the C.S. Lewis books, consistent with Lewis's concern with medieval literature, consistent with the centrality of Christian teaching to Lewis, and also it provides a final way to make those stories, which seem to be so loose, hang together. So if you want to read the Narnia Code, it's a good read. There's also a BBC documentary film called the Narnia Code, and a much larger text, scholarly text, called Planet Narnia by Michael Ward. I recommend them.